The fluorescent lights hummed above me in the courtroom, casting everything in that slightly yellow tint that made everyone look a little older, a little more tired. I certainly felt both. My attorney, Miss Navarro, sat beside me shuffling papers, and across the aisle, my husband of 38 years sat with his legal team, not one lawyer, but two, looking like he was about to close a business deal rather than end a marriage. His posture was relaxed, one leg crossed over the other, the same confident half-smile he'd worn at every corporate dinner I'd ever been forced to attend. Then the back door of the courtroom opened, and my whole world shifted. "Your Honor?" A clear, steady voice rose from behind me. "I have something I think you need to see. My grandmother doesn't know about it." I turned around. My 13-year-old grandson, Oliver, stood in the aisle holding a laptop, his school-issued Chromebook, with the scratched corner and the peeling sticker of a cartoon dinosaur on the back. Laura, my daughter, was right behind him, and by the look on her face, she was just as shocked as I was. Judge Perkins, a tall man in his early 60s with reading glasses perched on the tip of his nose, leaned forward. "And who might you be, young man?" "Oliver Brennan, sir. I'm Carol's grandson." "Your Honor, this is completely inappropriate." That was Mr. Whitmore, my husband's lead attorney, already on his feet. "A minor has no standing in these proceedings." Judge Perkins held up one hand. "I'll decide what's appropriate in my courtroom. Come up here, son." When Oliver opened that laptop and turned the screen toward the judge, I watched my husband's face drain of every last drop of color. His jaw went slack. For the first time in 38 years, Thomas Brennan had absolutely nothing to say. But I need to go back. Back to the morning that started all of this, 5 months before I found myself sitting in that courtroom. It was a Wednesday in early March, and I was standing at the kitchen island chopping vegetables for a soup that nobody had asked for but everyone would expect. The house was one of those big colonials in Ridgewood, New Jersey, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a yard I maintained myself because Thomas said landscapers were a waste of money, even though we could afford a dozen of them. He'd retired 2 years earlier as a regional vice president at a pharmaceutical company. Good pension, excellent investments, the kind of retirement most people dream about. Except that his retirement meant he was home all the time, and when Thomas was home, everything I did was wrong. "Carol." His voice came from the living room. Not a question, not a greeting, just my name, like a summons. "Yes? Did you move my reading glasses?" They were on the end table next to his recliner. They were always on the end table next to his recliner because I put them there every single night after he fell asleep watching cable news. "They're on the end table, Tom." A pause. Then the creak of leather as he shifted in his chair. "No, they're not. I'm looking right at it." I dried my hands, walked into the living room, picked up the glasses from the end table exactly where I'd said and held them out to him. He took them without a word. "No, thank you. No, sorry." He just put them on and went back to his newspaper. I stood there for a moment, and I don't know why that particular instance hit me so hard. I'd done this dance 10,000 times. The missing glasses, the misplaced remote, the shirt that wasn't ironed right, the dinner that was too salty or not salty enough. But something about standing there at 63 years old, being summoned like a servant to hand a grown man his own glasses that were exactly where I'd told him, made my chest feel hollow. I went back to my soup. "And Carol?" he called after me. "Your sister called while you were at the store. I told her you were busy this week." My sister Diane lived 40 minutes away in Montclair. We used to talk every day, see each other every weekend. Over the years, Thomas had whittled that down to once a month, sometimes less. He didn't like Diane. "She asked too many questions," he said. "She was a bad influence. She was always stirring up trouble." What Diane actually did was treat me like a person. She remembered that I used to be Carol Sullivan, the woman who'd worked as a bookkeeper at a small accounting firm in East Orange and had been good at it. Really good. I could untangle a financial mess faster than anyone in the office. My boss, Mr. Hamamoto, used to say I had a sixth sense for numbers. But 2 years into our marriage, Thomas decided we didn't need 2 incomes. His career was taking off. It made more sense for me to stay home, manage the household, raise the children. "You'll never have to worry about money," he'd said. "I'll take care of everything." And he did take care of everything. That was the problem. Every bank account, every investment, every piece of property, all in his name. He gave me a household allowance, deposited into a separate account on the first of every month. Enough to cover groceries, cleaning supplies, and the occasional new blouse if I needed one. If I wanted anything beyond that, I had to ask. At 63 years old, I had to ask my husband for permission to buy a pair of shoes. "Tom," I said, coming back to the doorway, "I'd like to have lunch with Diane this week." He turned a page of his newspaper. "I just told you. I said you were busy." "I'm not busy." He lowered the paper and looked at me over those glasses I'd just handed him. "Carol, I'm not having this conversation again. Your sister fills your head with ideas. Every time you see her, you come home moody and difficult. I don't need that. She's my sister. And I'm your husband. I think I know what's best for this family." He lifted the newspaper back up. Conversation over. Except it wasn't. Not this time. "I'm going to have lunch with Diane." The newspaper came down slowly. Thomas stared at me with an expression I'd seen directed at incompetent employees, at waiters who brought the wrong order, at anyone who dared challenge him. "Excuse me?" I said. "I'm going to have lunch with my sister." He stood up. Thomas was 6'1", and even at 66, he was an imposing man. He'd played college football, and he still carried himself like someone used to physical dominance. "You're going to do what I tell you to do. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. Maybe it shouldn't work that way anymore." His face went red. "After everything I've provided for you, this house, the car you drive, the clothes on your back, you'd have nothing without me, Carol. Nothing. You were a bookkeeper making $30,000 a year when I found you. You should be grateful." I didn't cry. That surprised me more than anything. I'd spent 38 years crying in the bathroom, in the car, into my pillow at night. But that morning, standing in the doorway of the living room in Ridgewood, New Jersey, I was completely dry-eyed. "I'm going to have lunch with Diane," I said for the third time. And I walked out of the room. I had lunch with Diane that Thursday, and the Thursday after that, and every Thursday for the next month. We'd meet at a little cafe in Montclair, and over cups of coffee and shared plates of pastries, I started to remember what it felt like to have a conversation where I wasn't afraid of saying the wrong thing. "Carol, you need to leave him," Diane said during our fourth lunch. She'd been saying some version of this for 20 years, but now it felt different. Now I was listening. "I don't have any money, Di. I don't have a career, a resume, anything. I'm 63. You're 63, not dead. And you're the smartest woman I know. You were a brilliant bookkeeper. You raised 2 kids practically alone. You've managed a household on a shoestring budget for almost 4 decades because that man kept you on a leash. You have more skills than you give yourself credit for. He'll fight me. He'll make it ugly. It's already ugly, sweetheart. It's been ugly for 38 years. She was right. I filed for divorce 3 weeks later. Thomas's reaction wasn't rage this time. It was something worse, cold, calculated amusement. He sat in his recliner, read the papers Laura had helped me have served, and then he looked up at me with that half-smile. "You really think you can do this? You have no idea what you're walking into. I have the best attorneys money can buy. And Carol, it's my money. Half of it is mine." He actually laughed. "Half? Sweetheart, you can't even tell me how much is in our investment accounts. You don't have the passwords. You don't have the statements. You don't even know which bank we use for the brokerage account. You signed whatever I put in front of you for 38 years. What exactly do you think you're going to claim? I contributed to this marriage, Tom. You made soup and folded laundry. That's not a contribution. That's a hobby." I moved in with Laura and Oliver the next day. Laura was 34, a middle school guidance counselor, divorced herself 3 years prior. She lived in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in Maplewood. It was small. After the Colonial in Ridgewood, it felt like a shoebox. But it was warm, and it was safe, and nobody in that apartment made me feel like I was less than human. Oliver gave me his room without being asked and moved himself to an air mattress in the living room. "It's fine, Grandma," he said. "I like camping. This is like indoor camping." That boy, 13 years old, lanky, with his mother's brown eyes and a quiet intensity that reminded me of myself at his age. He was always watching, always paying attention. I didn't realize just how much. The weeks that followed were difficult. Miss Navarro, my attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who worked out of a small office in Newark, laid out the situation for me at our first real meeting. Mrs. Brennan, your husband has been very deliberate about keeping you financially in the dark, but New Jersey is an equitable distribution state. You're entitled to a fair share of marital assets, and after 38 years, that share is going to be substantial. The challenge is going to be finding everything. What do you mean, finding everything? I mean, your husband is a smart man. He was a corporate VP. He knows how money works. If he's been planning for this, and men like him usually are, there may be assets we don't know about. Hidden accounts, transferred properties, undervalued investments. We're going to need a forensic accountant. A forensic accountant. The words sent a chill through me. Not because I was afraid of what we'd find, but because I knew in my bones that Thomas had been moving money around for years. All those late nights in his home office. The locked filing cabinet I was never allowed to open. The way he'd always insisted on doing the taxes himself, even though I was the one with bookkeeping experience. But Thomas didn't wait for us to come to him. He struck first. 3 weeks before our preliminary hearing, I received a call from Miss Navarro. "Carol, I need you to come in." They filed a motion. The motion claimed that I was financially irresponsible, that I had a spending problem, that over the course of our marriage, I had wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars on frivolous purchases, and that Thomas had been forced to restrict my access to funds for the family's protection. They had credit card statements cherry-picked, of course showing purchases at department stores and online retailers. They had a sworn statement from Thomas claiming I'd once spent $12,000 on a shopping spree in Manhattan without telling him. I stared at the documents in Miss Navarro's office. This is insane. The $12,000 that was for Laura's wedding. Her dress. The bridesmaids' gifts. The decorations. Thomas told me to handle it and gave me the card. He knew exactly what it was for. I believe you, but we need to prove it. Then it got worse. Thomas's lawyers filed a second motion claiming that I was suffering from early-stage cognitive decline. They had a letter from Dr. Myers, our family physician, or rather, Thomas's golf buddy, expressing concern about my mental acuity. They had statements from 2 neighbors, both couples we'd socialized with for years, both firmly in Thomas's camp, claiming I'd exhibited confusion and memory lapses at recent gatherings. "He's trying to get me declared incompetent," I said to Miss Navarro, my voice shaking. "He's trying to scare you into settling for less. It's a pressure tactic. It's a lie. I know. And we're going to prove that too." But proving it felt impossible. Thomas had spent 38 years building the cage, and now he was using every bar to keep me trapped. I'd lie awake at night in Oliver's little room, staring at his glow-in-the-dark star stickers on the ceiling, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe I was too old for this. Maybe Thomas was right and I'd end up with nothing. Maybe I should just go back, swallow my pride, and live out the rest of my days making soup and finding glasses. What I didn't know was that Oliver had been watching, listening, and acting. The day of the preliminary hearing arrived, May 14th. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, more like a large conference room with a judge's bench at the front. Thomas sat with his 2 attorneys looking like he owned the place. I sat with Miss Navarro feeling like I might throw up. Mr. Whitmore went first, painting a picture of Thomas as a dedicated provider married to an ungrateful, mentally declining woman who'd been manipulated by her sister into filing a frivolous divorce. He presented the credit card statements. He referenced Dr. Myers' letter. He asked the court to consider a cognitive evaluation before proceeding. Miss Navarro countered with my own statement, my medical records from my actual doctor showing perfect health, and character references from Diane and 2 friends. But I could see Judge Perkins weighing both sides, and my heart sank. Thomas's presentation was polished, professional. Mine felt scrappy and desperate. That's when the courtroom door opened. "Your Honor, I have something I think you need to see." Oliver walked to the front of the courtroom with that beaten-up Chromebook. Laura followed, her face a mixture of pride and terror. Miss Navarro looked at me. I looked back, bewildered. "About 2 months ago," Oliver said, his voice steady, "my grandpa started coming over to our apartment to talk to my mom about the divorce. He didn't know I was in my room. My bedroom wall is really thin, and I could hear everything. He said some things that scared me. So I started writing them down. Then I started recording on my laptop. Your Honor, Mr. Whitmore began. Sit down, counselor. Judge Perkins didn't even look at him. Go on, son. Oliver opened a video file. The camera angle was skewed, clearly propped up on a desk, and pointed through a cracked bedroom door, but the audio was crystal clear. It showed Thomas sitting at Laura's kitchen table. Laura was across from him, arms crossed. Thomas's voice filled the courtroom. Listen to me, Laura. I need you to back off. Stop helping your mother. If she drops this divorce, everyone's better off. Laura's voice. She's not dropping it, Dad. She's miserable. She has been for years. She doesn't know what she is. She's 63 years old with no money and no plan. Without me, she's going to end up in some studio apartment eating canned soup. Is that what you want for her? I want her to be happy. Thomas leaned forward on the video. Happy? She doesn't know what happy means. And I'll tell you something else. I've been moving things around. The Schwab account, the rental property in Pennsylvania, the trust I set up in 2019. By the time her little lawyer figures out what I'm worth, half of it will be somewhere she'll never find it. I've got a guy. Offshore. Completely clean. Laura's voice, sharp. Dad, that's illegal. It's smart. And it's none of your business. All you need to do is keep your mouth shut and tell your mother to come home. The video stopped. The courtroom was silent. Oliver scrolled to another file. This one is from 3 weeks later. Grandpa came over when Mom was still at work. He didn't know I was home. He pressed play. Thomas was in the apartment hallway, on his phone, pacing. His voice was low, but the laptop microphone picked up every word. Yeah, it's me. Listen, I talked to Myers. He's on board. He'll write whatever we need, cognitive decline, early dementia, whatever sounds worst. If we can get the judge to order an evaluation with our guy, we can drag this out for months. She'll run out of money for that lawyer before we even get to discovery. A pause. Then Thomas laughed. No, she has no idea. She doesn't even know about the LLC in Delaware. 38 years married to a bookkeeper, and she never once looked at a bank statement. That's the beautiful part. Another pause. Exactly. By the time this is over, she'll have nothing. She'll come crawling back, and I'll let her on my terms. Same as always. The recording ended. I was shaking. Not with fear, with something hotter, something I'd been pushing down for decades. My hands gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles went white. Judge Perkins removed his glasses slowly and set them on the bench. He looked at Thomas, who was whispering frantically to Mr. Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore looked like a man who just discovered his client had been lying to him, which, based on his expression, was exactly what had happened. Mr. Brennan, the judge said, his voice low and measured. Did I just hear you, in your own words, admit to hiding marital assets, conspiring to fabricate a medical diagnosis, and coaching a physician to commit perjury? Your Honor, those recordings were made without my client's consent, Mr. Whitmore started. In your daughter's apartment, where you were an uninvited guest, in the state of New Jersey, where one-party consent applies, since the minor was present in his own home. Try again, counselor. Silence. Furthermore, Judge Perkins continued, you referenced an LLC in Delaware, an offshore arrangement, and a rental property in Pennsylvania that, let me check, do not appear anywhere in your financial disclosures. Is that correct, Miss Navarro? Miss Navarro was already flipping through documents. That's correct, Your Honor. None of those assets were disclosed. Judge Perkins turned back to Thomas. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to be very clear. You have just provided this court with evidence of fraud, perjury, contempt, and what may constitute financial elder abuse. I am referring this matter to the county prosecutor's office. I am ordering a complete forensic audit of all your financial holdings, domestic and international. I am freezing every account, asset, and property in your name effective immediately. Thomas stood up. This is outrageous. That boy had no right. That boy, Judge Perkins said, leaning forward, may have just prevented one of the most calculated cases of spousal abuse I've seen in 20 years on this bench. Sit down, Mr. Brennan. Before I add disruption of proceedings to the list. Thomas sat. The judge looked at Oliver. "Young man, what made you decide to do this?" Oliver glanced at me, and for a moment he wasn't a brave kid standing up in a courtroom, he was just a 13-year-old who missed the grandmother who used to read to him at bedtime. I could hear him through the wall, sir. The things he said about my grandma, that she was stupid, that she was nothing without him. But she's not nothing. She's the smartest person I know. She used to help me with my math homework, and she'd always figure out the answer before I even finished reading the problem. She's not confused. She's not crazy. My grandpa just wants everyone to think she is, so she'll stop fighting. I stood up without thinking, without asking permission from the judge, from my lawyer, from anyone. I walked to Oliver and wrapped my arms around him, and he buried his face in my shoulder the way he used to when he was small, and the world was too loud. I could feel him trembling. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you, Grandma," he whispered. "I didn't want you to be scared, but I couldn't let him win." "You did exactly right," I whispered back. "You did exactly right." The divorce was finalized 7 weeks later. It wasn't even a fight, it was a surrender. Mr. Whitmore withdrew from the case within 48 hours of the hearing. Thomas's new attorney, a weary-looking man named Gelb, advised him to settle immediately and cooperate fully with the forensic audit. The audit uncovered everything: the Delaware LLC holding 2 rental properties, a brokerage account Thomas had opened under a slight variation of his name, a trust fund he'd set up that listed only himself as beneficiary, a wire transfer to an account in the Cayman Islands that he'd initiated just 2 weeks after I filed for divorce. In total, Thomas had hidden just over $900,000. The judge didn't just award me half. Because of the fraud, because of the hidden assets, because Thomas had systematically attempted to deceive the court, I was awarded 65% of total marital assets. The house in Ridgewood, which sold for $1.2 million, the retirement accounts, the investments. My share came to just under $2 million. I remember sitting in Miss Navarro's office the day the final numbers came through. She slid the paper across the desk and I stared at it for a long time. "Is this real?" She smiled. "It's real, Carol. I was a bookkeeper. I used to work with numbers every day. But I've never seen a number this big with my name next to it. Get used to it." That was 8 months ago. I'm 64 now. I bought a condo in Maplewood, 10 minutes from Laura and Oliver. It's not big, 2 bedrooms. A small kitchen, a living room with windows that face east so I get the morning light. I painted the walls myself, a warm cream color that makes the whole place glow at sunrise. The second bedroom is my office. I bought a desk, a good computer, and accounting software. Because here's the thing Thomas never counted on. I still had my skills. They were rusty, sure, but they were there. 38 years of organizing a household on a controlled budget, of tracking every penny, of managing the financial details of our entire life. While Thomas signed the checks and took the credit, it turns out that's a pretty solid foundation. I started a small bookkeeping business. Just me, working from home, taking on local clients, a bakery in South Orange, a hair salon in Maplewood, a family-owned hardware store in Millburn. Word spread. I'm not making a fortune, but I'm making my own money, deposited into my own account, with my own name on it. For the first time in 38 years. Diane comes over every Saturday morning. We drink coffee and eat pastries from the bakery whose books I manage. They give me a discount, and we talk about everything and nothing. Last weekend, she brought me a brochure for a trip to Portugal. "Let's go in the spring," she said. "You always said you wanted to see Lisbon." I always did. Thomas said Europe was overrated. I'm going to Lisbon in April. Oliver comes over after school most Wednesdays. He does his homework at my kitchen table while I work on client files at my desk, and sometimes he'll bring me a problem he's stuck on, and we'll work through it together. Last month he told me he wants to study computer science in college. "But maybe I'll minor in criminal justice," he said with a grin, "just in case Grandpa tries anything else." I laughed. I laugh a lot these days. It still surprises me sometimes, the sound of my own laughter in my own apartment. For 38 years, I laughed when Thomas made a joke, laughed at dinner parties to keep up appearances, laughed to smooth things over when he was in a mood. But I don't think I actually laughed. Not really. Not the kind that starts deep in your belly and comes out before you can stop it. As for Thomas, I don't know much about his life now. I know the prosecutor's office charged him with contempt of court and attempted fraud. I know he accepted a plea deal that included probation and a fine. I know he sold the Ridgewood house because it was part of the settlement, and I heard from a mutual friend that he moved to a condo in Hoboken. The same mutual friend told me he says terrible things about me to anyone who'll listen, that I was ungrateful, that I took him for everything, that I turned Laura and Oliver against him. I used to care what people thought of me. I spent 38 years crafting myself into whatever Thomas wanted me to be: quiet, accommodating, invisible. But I've discovered something at 64 that I wish I'd known at 26. The people who believe him were never my people in the first place. And the people who matter, Diane, Laura, Oliver, my friends, my clients, they know the truth. Sometimes, late at night, I sit in my living room with the lights off and just breathe. I listen to the quiet. Not the tense, walking on eggshells quiet of the Ridgewood house, but real quiet, peaceful quiet, the quiet of a space that belongs to me. I keep Oliver's old dinosaur sticker on my refrigerator. He peeled it off his Chromebook and gave it to me after the hearing. For bravery, he said. I look at it every morning when I make my coffee. My own coffee, at my own temperature, in my own kitchen. And I think about how the smallest, most unexpected things can change the course of a life. A boy who listened through a thin wall, a cracked bedroom door, a scratched-up school laptop with a peeling sticker. I'm 64 years old. I'm a bookkeeper, a small business owner, a grandmother, a sister, a friend. I'm going to Lisbon in April, and I'm just getting started.